When you're a kid, sleep feels safe. You fall asleep wherever you land, the couch, the floor, a blanket fort, and nothing bad ever happens. But for one girl, sleeping in a toy indoor tent at her cousin's house was the first night she experienced something she still can't explain, because sleep paralysis doesn't care how old you are, and what she saw standing outside that tent should not have been real. Beth was only 10 when it happened. Her parents dropped her off to stay the night at her older cousin's house, a place she always loved because they let her stay up late, watch scary movies, and roam around their finished basement like it was a playground. That night, instead of sleeping on the couch, her cousin insisted they use his indoor camping tent, one of those tiny nylon pop-up tents made for kids with thin poles and mesh windows. Beth thought it was awesome. A sleepover inside a tent indoors? Perfect. She didn't know those thin nylon walls would become the reason she felt trapped instead of safe. Beth fell asleep fast. But sometime after midnight, she woke up completely unable to move. Her arms wouldn't lift. Her legs wouldn't twitch. Even her jaw felt frozen in place. Only her eyes worked. She didn't know what paralysis was. She only knew she was awake and stuck. The basement felt wrong, too quiet, like someone had muffled the air itself. And then she saw it, a tall, still silhouette standing just outside the tent, facing her. Beth's mind screamed, but her body refused to respond. She couldn't even blink fast enough to look away. The figure didn't move, it just stood there, motionless and towering, its head nearly brushing the basement ceiling. She couldn't make out details, just a perfect sharp outline of a tall human shape, completely black, like a shadow that wasn't attached to anything. But what terrified her wasn't the figure, it was the figure's shadow, stretching toward the tent floor. Except the basement lights were off. There shouldn't have been any shadow at all. Beth watched in helpless silence as the shadow moved before the figure did. It slid across the carpet, not gliding, crawling, like it had too many limbs. The nylon tent grew darker from the inside, as if someone draped a blanket over it. The walls rustled slightly, bowing inward. Beth felt pressure on her chest. Her breath thinned to small, shaky gasps. The zipper on the tent door twitched, not opening, just tapping, like a fingertip softly brushing it. Hot tears streamed down her cheeks, the only part of her body still capable of movement. The shadow reached the tent's entrance and stopped. Beth watched the tent wall as it bent inward. A head-shaped silhouette pressed against the nylon, not rounded like a person's, longer, narrow, bony in a way that reminded her of an animal skull. The fabric dipped as if something was gently leaning on it. The air vibrated with a low hum, almost like static. Then, inches from her face through the thin nylon, she heard a whisper. Dry. Broken. Barely more than a breath. Don't look at me. But Beth was looking, and she could not stop. Right when she thought she would pass out from fear, everything slammed back at once. She could move, she could breathe. Sound returned sharply, like someone unmuted the world. Beth sat up gasping, hands trembling. The basement was empty. No shadow, no figure, but the tent wall still had a faint dent where the face had pressed against it, slowly rising back to its normal shape like a balloon reinflating. She sprinted upstairs crying, waking everyone in the house. They told her it was a nightmare, a kid's imagination, nothing more. Beth didn't believe them. Beth never slept in another tent again, not outside, not inside, not even those fun blanket forts kids make in living rooms. She refused sleepovers for years, and she never went into that basement again, even during the day. She eventually learned about sleep paralysis, about the hallucinations, the shadow people, the brain waking up before the body, but even now in her late 20s, Something about that night doesn't fit the explanation. Paralysis can't push fabric inward. Paralysis can't darken a tent from the inside. Paralysis doesn't whisper. Recently, Beth visited the same cousin again for the first time in years. Different house, different neighborhood, but in the living room, pushed against a wall, she saw a beat-up, partially collapsed children's pop-up tent. Same yellow nylon, same mesh windows. She froze, because on the tent wall, the only panel not damaged over the years, was a faint indentation, a shape, like something once pressed its face against it from the outside. Low, long, skull-shaped. Beth never said a word. She just left, and she hasn't been back since. There's a moment where your brain wakes up before your body does. Most people experience it once or twice in their life. But for one man, Jay, it didn't stop. It got worse. It grew closer. And eventually, it crossed a line that shouldn't be possible. Jay was 29, living alone in a small basement apartment beneath an old house in the outskirts of town. He worked long hours, mostly nights, and slept whenever he could. He'd never experienced anything like sleep paralysis before. No shadow figures, no night terrors. He was a normal guy with normal stress. Everything changed the week he started waking up and couldn't move. The first time, he opened his eyes to total stillness. He could breathe, but barely. His limbs felt cemented into the mattress. And then he saw it. In the far corner of the room, just beyond the reach of the weak lamp, something was crouched down low. It didn't look like a person. Too long, too uneven, like someone had folded a human body the wrong way and told it to stay still. Jay tried to blink it away, hallucination, trick of the light, anything. But the longer he stared, the more it seemed to be staring back. When the paralysis broke, he jolted upright. The corner was empty. He tried to forget it. Jay chalked it up to exhaustion, sleep debt, night shift stress messing with his brain. He looked it up online. Everything pointed to harmless sleep paralysis. People saw shadow people all the time. Nothing could actually hurt you. He forced himself to believe that. Until the next night, when the thing wasn't in the corner anymore. It was halfway to his bed. Jay started dreading sleep, but no matter how hard he fought it, exhaustion always won. Every paralysis episode was worse than the last. The creature didn't walk, it crawled. Each movement came with a soft pop, like bones cracking under pressure. Its breath sounded wet, like air pushing through ruined lungs. And every night it got closer. 3 feet away, 2 feet. At one point, he swore he saw its fingers hooking over the edge of his blanket, and when the paralysis broke, those fingers weren't there. But the blanket was bent downward, like something had just been pulling on it. One morning, Jay woke up, actually awake, fully able to move, and noticed something he couldn't rationalize. 4 dark, greasy smudge marks on the wooden floor, in the exact pattern of fingertips, leading from the corner to the side of his bed. He tried wiping them with a damp rag. They didn't come up. They weren't dust. They weren't dirt. They were sticky, as if whatever made them had left an oily residue behind. And that's the moment Jay realized something was wrong. Sleep paralysis doesn't leave physical marks. A week after his first episode, Jay woke up at 3:14 a.m. The time was always between 3:12 and 3:15, and instantly knew something had changed. He couldn't move. He couldn't turn his head, but he could feel breath on his cheek. Slow, shallow, cold. It wasn't at the corner or on the floor. The thing was standing beside his bed. Jay's eyes rolled as far as they could toward the left, and there, just inches away, he saw it. A face that wasn't a face. Sunken, elongated, like someone had stretched human skin over a skull too tall and too narrow. Its mouth hung open slightly, not in anger, not in malice, almost like curiosity. It leaned closer, closer, until its forehead almost touched his. Then its jaw cracked loudly, and a thin, rasping whisper spilled out, not spoken, but exhaled. "Stay awake." And the paralysis broke instantly. Jay didn't scream, didn't run. He simply sat upright, heart pounding so violently he thought it might burst. He turned on every light in the apartment, checked every corner, locked the door, sat in the shower fully dressed because it was the brightest place he had. He didn't sleep the next night, or the night after that, but on the third night of staying awake, around the same time he would normally experience paralysis, Jay heard something from his bedroom, 3 slow taps on the wall, right next to his bed, like someone was testing to see if he was asleep. Jay wasn't sure if he imagined it, until the second night, when it happened again and again, always at 3:12, always the same pattern, 3 taps, like a reminder. Jay moved out 2 weeks later, left everything behind, the bed, the furniture, even most of his clothes. He didn't care what it cost. He sleeps better now, but every so often, usually when he's been awake too long, he'll feel his body get heavy. His limbs refuse to move, and he swears, just before he snaps out of it, that he can hear breathing inches from his ear, and a voice, faint but familiar, exhaling the same words from that night. Stay awake, because whatever followed him didn't stay in that apartment. It stayed with him. When Mason was 14, he lived in a quiet neighborhood where nothing dangerous ever happened. It was the kind of place where kids rode bikes late into the evening, porch lights stayed on year-round, and parents left their doors unlocked without thinking twice. But one winter night, during a heavy windstorm, the entire street lost power. At first, it was exciting. Mason and his little sister lit candles in their bedrooms, wrapped themselves in blankets, and joked about being stuck in the old times. Outside, wind slammed into the house, making the siding groan. Branches scraped the windows like fingernails, but just after midnight, Mason woke up in complete darkness. Not candlelight, not moonlight, nothing. A kind of darkness that felt thick, like it had weight to it. He blinked into it, expecting the power to flicker or the storm to ease, but the room felt too silent, too still. He tried shifting under the blankets but couldn't move, not even his fingers. His chest rose in tiny, shallow breaths, just enough to keep him conscious, not enough to calm him. He had never even heard the term sleep paralysis. But the moment it hit, he understood something primal. He wasn't alone in the room. At the foot of his bed, where the last of the candlelight had died earlier, he sensed a shape. He couldn't see it, but he felt it, like air bending around something tall, something waiting. His eyes strained in the dark, and that's when a soft, almost inaudible crack echoed, like the sound of joints shifting or a neck turning too far. And then, a slow inhale, not his. Something else was breathing in the room with him. He couldn't move, he couldn't call for his parents. He just lay there, frozen in blackness, so complete it felt alive, listening to that slow, uneven breathing draw closer, inch by terrifying inch. The paralysis ended all at once. His body jerked, his lungs filled, and he scrambled for the candle on his nightstand with shaking hands. When the flame finally lit, the room was empty. Too empty. He didn't sleep the rest of the night. For weeks after the storm, Mason tried to convince himself it was a dream. Stress, darkness, his imagination, anything but the truth that something had crept into his room that night. But it didn't end there. A month later, he woke again, paralyzed, but this time with his eyes fully open. The power was on, the digital clock glowing faintly across the room. He tried to move, but couldn't, tried to blink, with no luck. His body was a corpse beneath him while his mind raced. Then he noticed the curtains. They were moving, not gently swaying from a draft, not barely shifting, but moving in slow, deliberate waves, like someone was running a hand down the length of the fabric from the outside. Mason's vision sharpened, locked onto the window. Behind the sheer curtain, a silhouette stood motionless, tall, thin, head tilted at a painful angle. At first he thought it was a coat rack, something mundane that his scared brain was twisting into a monster. But then it leaned closer. The outline of a long arm lifted and pressed a hand against the glass. Its fingers were far too long. The curtain outlined the entire hand, each finger spanning nearly the full height of the pane. Then, as if it sensed he was watching, the silhouette lowered its head. 2 faint points of reflected light, not glowing, just reflecting his alarm clock, caught where its eyes would be. It was staring directly at him. Paralyzed and helpless in his own bed, Mason watched as the figure's hand slowly dragged down the window, leaving a distorted streak across the fabric. No sound, no breathing, no movement except that hand. The moment Paralysis broke, he jumped from the bed and ripped the curtains open. The window was empty. No footprints in the frost outside, no marks on the glass. Nothing. But the curtain, the one he had just seen dragged downward, still held a faint, stretched impression of where the hand had pressed. He didn't wake his parents. He didn't sleep. He just sat on his bedroom floor until dawn, watching that curtain. It never moved again. By the time Mason left for college years later, he had convinced himself that whatever he experienced was tied to that house, to that storm, that darkness, that unlucky night. He left the memories behind with his childhood bedroom. That illusion shattered during finals week, when he collapsed from exhaustion in his dorm room after days of studying. He had barely hit the pillow before Paralysis locked him in place again. But this time was different. There was light. The room wasn't dark. His desk lamp glowed beside him, laptop humming. That meant something else. If he couldn't move and the room was completely visible, then he'd be able to see everything. His eyes scanned slowly, the only part of him that could move. His chest tightened as he waited, praying he'd see nothing, that maybe he'd outgrown it. Maybe it really had been a childhood hallucination. Then the closet door creaked. Not fully, not even halfway. Just enough for the narrowest sliver of blackness to widen inside it. Just enough for something to slip through. The same tall silhouette he had seen at his window emerged into the lamp's glow, moving in short, disjointed motions like a puppet being pulled at the wrong angles. Its head tilted, spine cracked, arms hung too long beside its body. This time, Mason heard it breathe. A deep, rattled inhale that seemed to suck the warmth out of the room. He tried to scream. His throat didn't respond. His lungs didn't obey. The figure leaned down until its face hovered inches above his. But there was no face, just darkness. A hollow shape. Then, in a jagged whisper that seemed to scrape across his bones, it said, "You saw me." And everything snapped back. Mason sprang from the bed, knocking over his lamp. He collapsed to the floor, gasping. The closet door was wide open, but nothing stood inside. He transferred dorms the next week. It didn't help, because every few months, without warning, Paralysis hits him again. No shadow needed, no shape required. He always knows when it's coming. The air tightens, the silence deepens, and somewhere in the room, he hears breathing. Slow, heavy breathing.